What if depression is simply not living a story we're proud of? These are the words which hit me like a tsunami the first time that I read Donald Miller's book, A Million Miles in a Thousand Years. I was a college freshman at Cornell University, and I thought I was living a great story. YouTube content creation and blog post writing, financial freedom, traveling the world. But I awoke many days asking myself what the meaning was all for while grinding beans for my morning coffee. It took me until my second read in my sophomore year to realize the gap. I was a writer channeling words, but I wasn't channeling life. I weaved stories into silk quilts on my blog, but left the knitting of my physical journey on the sidelines. And worse yet, I weaved these stories alone instead of with other people. And a solo story is no story at all. So I began living my life more like a story. I became a cliche romantic with my first girlfriend. I turned my back into crushed ramen noodles with my dad in the 90-miler Adirondack canoe race. And I started Conscious College, a company devoted to helping college freshmen use journaling to grow their emotional intelligence, their self-understanding, and their purpose. The more I live life like a story, the more I notice how many students aren't living theirs. It makes me sad. I watch students walk to class, backpacks on, feeling like they're loaded by the crushing weight of the hope that something someday will change. To be clear, I don't think all depression is caused by simply not having a good story, of course. That's too black and white. There are clinical, neurochemical, genetic, and environmental roots for no amount of storytelling is going to change. But I've come to believe from experience and books like Lost Connections by Johann Hari, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and Finding Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, that a lot of what we experience as depression is not having a good story. Hari calls it disconnection from meaningful work, from other people, from values. Frankl calls it existential vacuum, and Csikszentmihalyi calls it psychic entropy. They're all circling on the same thing, which is when we stop participating in life and only spectate it, something inside us begins to wilt, like a houseplant put in the closet. And that's why I returned to Miller's book for a third pass, hoping to find answers on how we can all make our life more like a story. Here's what I found. Every great story starts with a character. That's you, the person watching this video right now. Howdy. As a person, theoretically, you're a mix of physical traits, values, relationships, ambitions, and more. And a lot of this stuff is fantastic. If you're like most of us, though, you're seeking something more, something deeper, something you can't quite explain. When I first came to college, I was an insecure, exercise-obsessed, lonely 18-year-old. But if you're similar to me back then, you don't want to change. Your habits fit like a broken-in pair of sneakers, uncomfortable to everyone else, but molded perfectly to you. So here's where it gets fascinating. The story we should go on depends where we are in our development. Some students need a story about learning to lean less on grades. Some students need a story about finding self-improvement. And yet another student's story is learning how to love. We don't all need the same quest, even if we're sitting in the same lecture hall. Regardless of your development, in most stories, something needs to get the character going. Think Bilbo getting invited to join a band of dwarves and a wizard in The Hobbit. That's where our story begins. The character is forced to start a story through an inciting incident. The inciting incident is the event the non-event or the other trigger that really gets things going. And of course, life isn't as clean as a storybook. Often we have multiple inciting incidents that make us start different stories. For me, I experienced a series of inciting incidents that changed me in my freshman year. Firstly, I lost my first freshman friend group because we didn't have the same values. Secondly, I got abandoned by my YouTube accountability group because one of them accused me of copying their content. It's complicated. And thirdly, I met one of the people who's most close to me still in my life, Chris, who is incredibly spiritual and probably one of the kindest, most genuine people I know. These inciting incidents, they kickstarted my journey towards what? I didn't know at the time. All I knew was that the greater the ambition, the greater the story. The best stories, the ones that make us weep every time we watch them, usually involves goals which are larger than the hero themselves. Goals that connect to entire webs of students, to entire communities, and even to the world. This is what I meant by I was only channeling words for my own story, not for others. So if you're watching this video, congratulations. This video is going to be your inciting incident. Could be a little more glamorous, but we can't all have a band of dwarves and a wizard show up at our doorstep to get us going. It's totally fine if you don't want to start with something grandiose. You might not know your goal, or you might to some degree, but it hasn't evolved yet. The goal itself matters less than having a goal, even if that goal is finding a goal. How many times can you say goal? It could be asking that cute girl or boy out. It could be pursuing a meaningful career path. It could be trying out for that club you walked past 11 times pretending to check your phone. Whatever you choose, it's unavoidable your story's going to have one thing. It will have obstacles. Countless obstacles showed up for me on my own journey through my freshman year. My girlfriend almost broke up with me after she told me I was too productivity obsessed and didn't love her enough. She was right. I struggled to get a business to work helping students learn note-taking and studying skills in Obsidian. I lost passion for my schoolwork as I felt more connected to content creation than to anything else. Each time I solved an obstacle, it seemed that another just popped up. It brought me to the brink of insanity, honestly, until I learned another storytelling tip from the book. The obstacles are the story. Have you ever skipped to the end of a romance novel? And not that I read romance novels, of course. Was it satisfying? Unless you experienced like the greatest sex scene that's ever blessed this entire planet, probably not. Because you didn't experience the obstacles, the near misses, the journey which led to the end. And so it didn't hit. Life works the same way. We complain, we get annoyed, we dodge obstacles without realizing it's the obstacles themselves that make the story. What makes an obstacle? On the surface, it's the external thing that's blocking you. It could be a professor, an exam, a particularly soul-crushing internship application portal that requires you to re-enter your entire resume before uploading. Yeah. But here's the deeper cut most of us avoid. It's the real obstacle is internal. We create obstacles from our relationship to them. Of course, that doesn't mean external obstacles don't matter. But in order to navigate those, we need to navigate those rooted internally. The more we mature, the more we learn we are the obstacle. And that sounds deflating, but it's actually the most liberating thing I've discovered in college because we're included in every single thing that we come across. So that means we can work on ourselves to navigate our obstacles rather than just punch ourselves up over having to think that the external obstacle is not possible to navigate. This doesn't mean we deserve every obstacle, of course. It doesn't mean it'll always feel fair. But whatever comes across as we continue our story is opportunity for growth. for reflection, especially when those obstacles carry the next storytelling principle. Great stories have obstacles with stakes. You can have a great character, a great goal, and a great obstacle. Think a Gandhi persona wanting to solve world hunger by creating 1,000 new soup kitchens. But if they simply use their $1 trillion, fund me trust fund that they inherited from their mother, then it's not a very good story because there was no tension, there was no sacrifice. So great obstacles are connected to great stakes. And let me show you what I mean from my own life. I almost died when two naive French tourists led one of my friends and I to come within 15 feet of a grizzly bear in Glacier National Park because they were snapping photos of it. And when we tried to figure out if it was a grizzly bear by being like, good to come on the path, they were like, yeah, we come. And then we walked within 15 feet of a grizzly bear. So yeah, to this day, that was crazy. And another time was when I led a consultancy project with a pharmaceutical executive and their entire data science team right after getting broken up with by my ex. So I would literally cry right before every single call, and then I'd show up. I put on some makeup, show up, and just pretend everything was fine. That sucked. That was one of the hardest moments of my life. And of course, we can't forget the time that I had to choose between staying with or breaking off one of my closest friendships because of fundamental value differences. So, as you can see, stakes come in many shapes and many sizes. They can be physical, like a loss of life or bodily safety. They can be psychological, like a loss of identity or mental health. They can be professional, damage to career prospects. And they can be relational, like damage to or loss of relationships. Most of our obstacles carry at least one. The ones that really transform us carry several at once. So here's the uncomfortable question. What are the stakes in your story? If the highest stake that you face this semester are what letter grade you're going to get on your next exam, that might explain why life feels like it's being lived in grayscale. Not because grades don't matter, but because a story where the only thing at risk is a number on a transcript doesn't ask much of you as a human being. It doesn't touch your identity. It doesn't test your relationships. It doesn't make you confront who you actually are when things get hard. That doesn't mean you should start manufacturing dangerous situations, but it might mean stepping into something that costs you more than a few study hours. Something where your sense of self is actually on the line. Whatever the obstacles and whatever their stakes, they have to prompt the character to do the next storytelling element. Great stories create transformation. Why do we like movies so much? No, really try and answer it. Movies have a unique pull on us compared to any form of story. Just the last week, I watched the Before trilogy, Arrival, The Secret Life of Chuck. And I think a large part of why I was so drawn to these films and why we're drawn to films in general is they're distilled transformation vessels. In the Before trilogy alone, Jesse transforms from an insecure, jaded boy to a hopeful, romantic longing between the first and second films. 2 hours and you've witnessed years of becoming. Or in comparison, most of our lives are mundane. Not boring necessarily, but mundane. Wake up, spend an unreasonably long amount of time in the shower, get some coffee, go to class, study, and repeat. There's not much visible transformation happening. But if you sliced all that up, what happened in a single day, and then put it in a 10-second moment, now we have a movie. And this transformation is really what we long for. What makes this transformation even more powerful is it's all action-oriented. Unless there are voiceovers, movies rely on characters' actions to progress the story. There's movement, there's consequence, there's decision. Compared to this to our real lives where we spend 173% of the day in our heads, at least me sometimes. rehearsing conversations that we'll never have and replaying ones that already happened. When I first heard this transformation principle, I asked myself one question: how can I live my life more like a movie? I began doing daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly journaling, and each of these became a ritual of reflection and of goal setting. What would the next month's major goals be? What would the story of the month look like? And most importantly, how could I embody that in an action of some sort rather than just thinking about it? I stopped treating journaling as a record of what happened and started treating it as a screenplay for what could happen next. And slowly, my life became more transformational. I became spiritual. I started creating content out of passion mixed with practicality rather than just practicality. I did psychedelics, and that was a trip, literally. But transformation doesn't have to look dramatic, right? I've watched students transform by switching from eating lunch alone to eating with someone once a week, by starting a journal, by telling a friend that they're actually struggling instead of performing the I'm fine ritual. Small actions repeated. That's the material of transformation. So, what is the ultimate story? It's not one with the biggest obstacles or the highest stakes. It's the one where you grow towards something larger than yourself, something that connects you to others and asks you to become more conscious, more loving, and more honest along the way. This is what I call the conscious college journey, the journey of ever increasing growth towards your true self. Every principle in this video feeds into that journey. The character who takes ownership of their development, the inciting incident that wakes them up, the obstacles and external and internal that sculpt them, the stakes that make it real, and the transformation that the character goes through. Here are 2 questions that I encourage you to sit with from this video. What story am I currently living? And is it one I'm proud of? And what's stopping me from starting a new one? I'm still living stories. They never end. Right now, mine involves a potential move to the Netherlands, applying for a master's program in educational science and technology. My obstacles are finances and a difficult work climate. The stakes are changing from my old Cornell identity, shifting careers, and the loneliness that comes with starting over in a new country. But you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. I feel so alive because eventually you realize the journey is the destination. And then you realize that sounds like a bumper sticker. And then you realize the best truths usually do. So create your own story and revel in the journey alongside me. And if you want to kickstart that, I highly encourage you to get my free college freshman cosmic journaling kit. This is a gamified journaling system that will help you build your emotional intelligence, your self-understanding, and your purpose, which you can use to figure out what story you want to live. It's got over 1,000 journaling questions and takes just 15 minutes a day in order to kickstart that story. Let this be your inciting incident. As always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Eat some peanut butter, and bye-bye.